tonight's story comes from Reddit's nosleep community and was written by username sophiethetoad, who kindly gave permission for it to be narrated here. It's about a memory that refuses to stay buried, and a neighbor who watched from the other side of a very tall fence. I didn't realize my new customer used to be my neighbor until I pulled into her driveway. The street name had sounded vaguely familiar when I first read it. A few landmarks on the drive over had sparked something in me. Nothing solid though, just a prickling sense of recognition I couldn't place. It only clicked when I actually saw my old childhood home sitting right beside my customer's property. I know it's strange that it took me that long, that I hadn't recognized anything when I put the address into Google Maps. But my uncle moved me out of this quiet neighborhood when I was 6. I barely remembered anything about living on this street or in that house. My girlfriend Ellie said that wasn't quite normal, told me gently that it was probably my brain blocking things out on purpose. I sat gripping the steering wheel long after I'd parked, staring at my childhood home. It backed onto a large woodland area, tall trees looming far above the roof. The bungalow itself looked abandoned, shattered windows, empty bottles scattered across dead yellow grass. Clearly, no one had lived there in a long time. A heavy pressure settled in my chest. For a moment, I considered leaving, but I'd only started my lawn mowing business a few months ago. I needed the money. This woman was only my 3rd customer so far. She hadn't called like the others. She'd emailed instead. "I'm interested in your service. Every week Sunday work?" I replied that Sundays were fine and asked for the address. She sent it, followed by another message. "Door left open Sundays, money on table, help self to drink, and meal." It struck me as odd that she'd contacted someone who lived an hour away instead of a local business, but she'd promised a generous tip. Still sitting in the van, I tried to remember my old neighbor. Elderly, maybe. The emails felt that way. But when I searched my memory for her face, I came up blank. Just another thing lost to my strange childhood amnesia. Her lawn was wildly overgrown, knee-high grass, thick and uneven. The house itself was perfectly normal. A neat 2-story place with a front porch. Well kept enough that the state of the yard felt odd, almost like a choice. I hesitated, wondering if I should knock or just start the job. In the end, I got to work. Part of me didn't want to meet her yet. I was delaying it. I couldn't explain why. As I mowed, my gaze kept drifting to the fence separating her property from my old home. It was enormous, easily 10 feet tall. I couldn't believe something like that had been approved in a quiet suburban street. But it wasn't just the size. Every time I looked at it, pressure built behind my eyes. The sensation of a memory forcing its way up while something inside me resisted just as hard. The effort made my head throb. Then, for a split second, I remembered hair. Long black strands spilling down the fence from the other side, tangled and thin, draped over the timber, clinging to the wood, hanging there like a ragged curtain. I'd frozen on my cheap plastic tricycle. One of the back wheels was missing, so I had to balance my weight just right to keep it upright. It's strange, the useless little details that scramble back when everything else is lost. The hair shifted, and slowly, above the lip of the fence, a pale forehead rose. There were eyes, white and cloudy. I only saw them for a moment, but I knew immediately who they were peeking down at. Me. Then there had been a sound behind me, maybe a voice, maybe someone calling my name. The eyes vanished. The forehead head sank out of sight. The hair slid upward, strand by strand, slithering back over the fence until there was nothing left at all. Cold washed through my body. I tightened my grip on the mower handle and focused on the lines of grass ahead of me. I didn't look at the fence again. Surely it had just been my imagination, something I'd invented out of boredom. No one could peer over a 10-foot-tall fence unless they were standing on stilts or balancing on some ridiculous ladder. And even then, why would anyone climb that high just to look at a child playing in their backyard? It was too strange to take seriously, too absurd. And yet, an unease bloomed low in my chest and refused to settle. Because that image, hair spilling over the fence, eyes watching, was suddenly one of the clearest memories I had from that house, from that time, clearer than anything else I could recall in over a decade. I shook my head, forced the image away, and got back to work. An hour later, the lawn looked respectable again. I packed my equipment back into my uncle's van. Then I remembered the money. I knocked on the front door and waited a bit. She did say to let myself in, but it felt wrong to just waltz into a stranger's house. I waited another few minutes before finally reaching for the handle and stepping inside. "Ms. Ramona, are you home?" I called out, remembering her name from her email address. One of the first things I noticed was the ceiling. It was unusually high. It made the space feel wide and open, almost cavernous. It also made it incredibly cold inside. Goosebumps rose over my arms. Most of the ground floor was open plan, so I spotted the kitchen right away, where a wooden table sat by the counter. There was money laid out neatly on top of it. Beside it, a glass jug filled with what looked like lemonade, ice cubes floating inside, a clean glass, a sandwich on a plate. She'd said to help myself. Still, I hesitated. I felt silly to be cautious, but I hadn't even met her. I picked up the money and nearly choked when I counted it. 4 $50 notes. I only charged $60. She'd mentioned a tip, sure, but this was excessive. What if she was elderly? What if she'd miscounted? I took 100 and left the other 100 on the table, just in case. That was when I heard something upstairs, a wheeze, wet and uneven, like air being dragged through damaged lungs. After that, 2 sharp creaks snapped through the house in quick succession, floorboards protesting under sudden weight. My body went rigid. Someone was definitely home. I stared at the staircase. "Hello?" My voice rang too loud in the open space. "Miss Ramona?" No answer. I edged closer to the stairs despite myself, my heart beginning to pound. The noises replayed in my head. What had made them? Had she fallen? Was she hurt? If she was elderly, I told myself, I should check. That was the decent thing to do. But another part of me was screaming to leave. The feeling was sudden and absolute, like stepping into a place you were never meant to enter. Like bait. After a moment, I turned back to the table. I picked up the sandwich so I wouldn't seem rude, my hands clumsy and shaking, and then I got out. When I drove home, I sat in the van for a long time with the engine off. The sandwich rested on the passenger seat. Eventually, I opened the bread. Inside was butter and raw, red meat. I swallowed, then noticed something else threaded through it. I pinched it between my fingers and pulled. A single hair slid free, dark, absurdly long. I told my girlfriend what happened, but left out the part about my strange memory. Ellie laughed. "You're scared of a little old granny." "I don't know if she's a granny," I said. "I've never met this woman. She could be a man for all I know." "Are you sure? You said she was your old neighbor." she said, her eyes soft but insistent. That gentle look she always got when she was trying to probe something about my childhood. Are you sure you don't remember anything? That long black hair entered my mind again. At that moment, I remembered something else. I remembered a single strand had caught in the fence, drifting in the breeze until it detached and floated down to my 6-year-old self. I remembered plucking it from the air and then playing with it carefully so it wouldn't snap. I had wrapped it around my arm, amazed I could coil almost the entire length up my little forearm, like linen around an Egyptian mummy. I shook my head at Ellie's question and told her about the inedible sandwich instead. Ellie laughed again, shaking her head. The poor woman probably has dementia. A week later, I went back. I didn't want to, but Ellie had made me realize I was being ridiculous and the money mattered. If we ever wanted to move out of my uncle's house, we needed it. My stomach churned the whole drive. Before I even started the mower, my eyes went to the fence again. I remembered long, curling fingers reaching over the top. And once more, I remembered seeing half a face peering down at me. Just eyes and a forehead visible above the timber, watching. I reluctantly went inside to collect my payment. This time, she'd left $300 on the table. Beside it, a note, the handwriting thin and spidery. Take all money. Why no drink? My gaze drifted to the jug of lemonade. I filled a glass, intending to pour half of it down the sink to make it look like I'd had some. Instead, for some reason I couldn't explain, I took a small sip. It was cold, sweet, good. After that, the memories returned, stronger than ever. I had a dream that night. A dream about food being thrown over an enormous fence. Sometimes it was a roast chicken, still warm inside a plastic bag, juices sloshing against the sides. Other times it was a whole chicken, raw, feathers still clinging to pale skin. Sometimes it was fresh fruit in a cracked plastic container. Other times it was rotting apples and a thick slab of heavy red meat. I remembered the hunger. I remembered setting up a blanket over the bushes beside the fence. A small hidden nest where I could crouch and store what I was given. I remembered eating like an animal, devouring whatever was edible before anyone could find me. I remembered my scalp itching constantly, lice, multiplying, biting, crawling, with no one bothering to stop them. A whole kingdom of parasites living freely in my hair. Then I remembered the hand. It slipped through the narrow gap between the fence and the bushes where I sat with my back pressed against the timber, rustling the spindly branches. The hand was enormous, but gentle. One long finger brushed the tangled hair out of my face. The itching faded. I stared up and saw nothing but the endless length of a thin, gray arm disappearing over the fence. I remembered wrapping my small hands around that enormous finger and holding tight, crying into it. Then I remembered an angry voice coming from somewhere. The finger wriggled gently until I released it, and then the hand vanished. The arm withdrew. When I looked back up, only a faint wisp of dark hair was visible above the fence line. Someone tore the blanket away from my hiding place. They yelled, screamed in disgust. I was sitting on a hoard of food. A lot of it was rotting. There were flies, there were maggots. Hands grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the bushes and away from the massive fence so hard I thought the bone would snap. "Stop!" I screamed. The third time I went back to mow Ramona's lawn, I did not hesitate. Something had begun to clarify itself inside me, like an image slowly coming into focus, and I knew I needed to speak with her. I didn't know if the memories were wholly real, but pieces were fitting together now, clicking into place with a quiet inevitability. I felt closer to the truth than I ever had before, and instead of making my head ache, it planted something determined inside me, something that refused to be quiet any longer. I thought maybe my neighbor had been a sweet old granny who babysat me sometimes. Maybe she fed me. Maybe she took care of me. Maybe she read me stories. Maybe this was the only way my memories were able to return, disguised as something else, something not quite real, but threaded through with truth. As I started the lawnmower this time, I didn't look away from the fence. I remembered the humming, a low, steady hum as I lay hidden in the bushes beside the fence. The yelling in the house always softened when I listened to her hums. I remembered being lifted so high I could see over the roof of my house. I remembered being placed on a sturdy tree branch in the forest and being given a dead fox. I remembered biting into the furry flesh, feeling warm blood dribble down my cheeks. I remembered sitting in a cocoon of warmth high above the ground, watching the stars blink into existence. I remembered running to my hiding place between the fence and the bushes, shaking, starving, sick with fear. I remembered someone chasing me. "Henry, you get back here right now, you little shit," she screamed. She caught my arm and wrenched me around. "Mummy, stop," I sobbed. "Don't hurt me again." I remembered my mother freezing, and I remembered something brushing the back of my neck, light and familiar, like long strands of hair. My mother gasped, staring at something above us, terror carved into her face. I looked up. Then the fingers came. They wrapped around my mother's body and lifted her up. She was screaming as she went, so I called out, "It's okay, Mummy. She's just taking you to see the stars." There was a deafening crunch, and her screaming stopped. I saw something fly across the sky like a meteor, disappearing into the forest. Hands closed around me. They were so warm when they lifted me, gentle, careful, cocooning me as I shook and clung to the heat. I rose high enough to see over the roof of my house, just like all those other times. I finally remembered seeing her face. The image was clear now, unblurred, impossible to look away from. She was pale and gaunt, her lips stretched too wide across her skull. But her eyes, they were dark, but they were warm. "Did Mummy like seeing the stars?" I asked her. She hummed. My hands shook. I didn't turn the lawnmower off. I walked toward her house on numb legs, the sound of the engine fading into something distant, barely there. The front door was open, as it always was. I climbed the staircase slowly. A low groan echoed from above, stretching and deepening as I went. The upper floor was completely open plan, wide and sloping like an expansive attic, and laid out across it was a very tall woman. Her skin was a shade close to gray. Her face had the weathered features of someone much older than me. Her limbs were long and spindly. She lay on her side on a soft floor mat that covered nearly every inch of the space. Her body folded carefully, purposely, as if she had made herself smaller for me. Her eyes found mine the moment I stepped inside. I dropped to my knees and sobbed before I could stop myself. Terror and grief and everything I had buried for so long rushed through me all at once, crushing and merciless. Fingers reached out, impossibly large, wrapping around me and drawing me gently toward her. I was pulled into warmth, deep and steady, and my shivering I said, the words breaking apart as they left me. She brushed my hair back. My cries thinned into small, broken whimpers. Why didn't she care about me? I whispered. Why did she let me starve? Why did she hurt me? I was just a little kid. Her warmth held. Her breathing stayed slow and even. I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was in a bed. Across from me, seated in an armchair, was a little old lady. Her eyes were distant, as if part of her had wandered somewhere far away and hadn't yet found its way back. Still, they stayed on me, steady and patient. We were still upstairs. The massive mat lay stretched across the floor, unchanged. The bed had been tucked into a small corner of the room, like it had been put there for me. "Who are you?" I asked. "What was that thing?" She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze drifted to something beside me. I followed it and saw a folded note resting on the mattress. I picked it up with shaking hands. I cursed with sighs and hunger, but I protect. Sweet little boy, cold and hungry, I carry you to the stars, where she not reach. Lost myself when I took her, but she not hurt you anymore. Forgive me, please. When I drove home, I finally asked my uncle to tell me the truth. I'd always known something horrible happened to my mother, but there were details surrounding the event that deep down, I think I never wanted to learn. But I felt stronger now. I was ready. He showed me the pictures first. They were of me as a little boy. My hair was long and scraggly. I wore dirty clothes that were torn at the seams. My body was mapped with bruises and cuts and burn marks. There wasn't much to know in the end, except the fact that my mother was a monster. And when she was found in the woods one day, half-eaten, a case that would quickly be declared as an animal attack, people called it karma after they learned what she did to me. I continued to visit Ramona. I brushed her hair and cared for her when she was a little old granny. I laid down and listened to her hums when she was something else. I wrote all of this down because, unlike my mother, Ramona deserves to be remembered. I could never tell anyone about her. They would have hurt her or killed her. But I needed someone to know. Ramona may have been a beast, but it wasn't her fault. Even when she lost control, it all came down to an instinct to protect. When she was dying, I fell asleep holding her large hand. And when I woke up, there was nothing. She was gone. Even though she doesn't live there anymore, even though the house is no longer occupied, I still go back to mow her lawn. And sometimes, when the lawn is done, I linger until the night swallows the sky. When I focus on the constellations, it almost feels like I'm rising slowly above the roof of the house.